All right. So, welcome back to our coding boot camp. This is our Hard Labs. We are on week 6. Chris, only one that can make his class today. It happens, but anybody that's watching online, watching the videos afterwards, we are going to go through some advanced topics and next steps. Today, specifically, we're going to finish our application. So we're gonna wrap up the last pieces that we need for it to be considered a bare bones but complete to-do list functional thing. Does all the parts we need it to do. And then tomorrow or Thursday next time, we'll talk about some more things. Specifically, I want to focus next time on Git and GitHub operations and version control systems in general. And that's what that is. Git is a version control system. It's a way to keep your code both in order, work with multiple people, work with big projects, use Git and that kind of thing, but then also save it and keep it a little bit persistent between devices even, and save it up in a cloud environment in different structures that you can grab and pull down different places. And we're going to use GitHub as the place that we grab stuff down from. But before we move into that, I wanted to tell a quick story. So I'm on the video may look a little different from mine this time. I'm on a different device today because in a series of all kinds of crazy things that have happened, like my wife broke her foot, my son, one of my kids got sick, and then my computer broke. That's the most relevant thing for this. So the computer that I've been using all this time completely broke, and I couldn't even connect to the operating system. Isn't even loading. I have to go back and do some things with it. And I had to quickly just grab a backup computer that I have that's my old work computer and dive in on that. So I'm using a different operating system now than I was. I'm on this is a Mac that I'm on today, and all of the work that I've
Congratulations.
done. Yeah, I mean, thanks, but
I'm
again,
just
not by
kidding.
choice. It was just more to fit in with people in Silicon Valley because they all had it, and I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure I could get a charger when I was at the office. Right? If I got a Windows PC, there's no way I could have found even like I had to remember my own charger everywhere. But so Mac's cool. I like it. It's all right. It's great. I don't hate it or nothing. But the point being that this everything in this course has been done online in the cloud, so I didn't lose anything. And so it's basically practicing what I'm preaching of saying you could do this class anywhere. I lost literally nothing. I'm going to jump in the same point that we left off last time. Didn't have to rebuild from scratch because it was all saved up in the cloud and it was all ready to go. So I unexpectedly was able to move quickly into a new device, and I hope that's something that we keep in mind. Like if you run into problems, rely on the things that we learn and use in here to kind of save your stuff and back yourselves up. So as a reminder, the things that we do that constitute the operations here, the CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete. The first time we did read, last time we got create. So that leaves us with update and delete. Update is very, very similar to create in a lot of the mechanics. There are going to be a handful of slight differences, but we'll call those out as we go. Largely, it'll be following most of the same patterns, and we'll reuse some of the same parts that we did last time. So a lot of what we're going to do today is going to be kind of some refactoring of things. And then delete is exceptionally simple. It's going to be very, very, very simple. So once we get through those two, I'm hoping we have time to refactor all of the views that we've written as functions into class-based views and use the power of classes to simplify a lot of the stuff that we've been doing in the functional based views. But we're going to finish up with functional based views to keep it consistent and get all the basic functions in, and our app will be complete. And then we'll be able to move into that more sort of advanced, if you will, use of classes, use of the built-in stuff that's in Django, and kind of make it nicer in a lot of ways and easier to maintain and whatnot, a little bit simpler. And then just as a refresher, sort of in the context of what we're doing as web design and back end development and whatnot, we're handling requests from users, their end users. They're sending them through our program of some sort or other people's APIs if we connect them to through our program. We send that info to the server. We get a response back. We send that response on to the user. And that's generally what we're doing here. So the terminology that we've been using is in this space called other things. And again, REST is just a framework that people use very popularly on the internet for um, different sorts of requests that go through here. We're not going to get into the details of the REST framework, but keep in mind it's stateless, so it doesn't save any information from the client on the server side. So the servers here on this down on the right don't save any information between requests. Requests are a finite thing. And if you keep that concept in mind, you'll be good with all of these. But again, we've seen posts a couple of times. We've mentioned get, even though we haven't written it explicitly on the kinds of requests that we see, and we're going to keep seeing those same things. It's not going to be much different. We're not going to see the other ones, but we are technically going to be doing put and delete requests today, but we're still going to be using the same structures and syntax because in Django we're kind of a step away from those things and we're interacting it through that framework. So you'll see shortly largely the same patterns that we've done with create. All right, so with that, barring any questions, Chris, do you have any questions from last time before we dive into the code for today?
No, not unless your suggestion has to do with how you keep your parentheses and your percentage symbols in the correct order.
No, I would love to be able to tell you how to magically do that the first time every time, but I just break my code and have to go find those things until you get good at it. It's infuriating, I know. But yeah, no, I feel you, man. All right. So on to Python Anywhere in our dashboard, we're going to open up a bash console and get started through the same steps that we normally do. We are in our home, not root, but our home directory. And so we're going to start our development environment. So we remember we called that my VM, so our virtual environment. And we have to type in bin, activate, using tab complete to make sure we're all in the same space or in the right place, that is. And then we're going to change directory into my site, top level directory. Oh, there we go. Using tab complete, make sure we're in the right place. Cool. And now we're here. So we're not going to do a lot directly right away, but that's always the first step to make sure that we're ready to roll and we can get things going. We're going to be writing going through the same process that we've done several times. Just a refresher where the site is now. We can navigate between the about page and the home page. Got a little something to look at. Our to-do list has a handful of tasks on it that we can see, and we can add a new task. So we can say, whatever. Task, give it a due date, and submit. And there we have it on here. So we could read and we could create. So now we need to make a way to change these, update them, and delete them. Those are the last two functions we need to do. So to do that, we're going to be messing around with mostly our views, URLs. We're going to follow the same patterns that we have before. I'm going to open up my files in a new tab here. But we're going to go down to our views in our to-do directory. So my site, to-do, and then views. And we're going to start stepping through that process that we've done a couple of times where we did it for index, about, and view tasks and create tasks. We write our view, we update our URLs, and then we do something with the templates in the front end. So we're going to go through that same process again, this time being our update view. And I'm going to put some space here at the bottom, not required, but I'm going to move it up on the screen so it's not all typing just down at the very, very bottom of my screen all the time. In fact, I'm going to go higher so this create task isn't in our way. There we go. Okay, so I'm under the create task definition that we made before. And I'm going to start a new one, just like we have in the past. We're going to define our update task view that's going to take a request like it has in the past, like we've done our other ones. I guess I can scroll just a little bit and look at it. Except this time, unlike our create task view, we're going to add the PK argument. And this is short for yep. Primary key. So the primary key, remember from the database, is the unique identifier in a row that can find one record. And if you keep it in mind at a high level, what we're doing here, we're going to find one record. We're going to take that out. We're going to make some changes to it, and we're going to put it back. Is basically the what an update operation is. So we have to tell what record it is, and the way to do that is we're going to pass that PK. So the first step is to go and grab that record. So we're going to define ourselves a variable. We'll call it tasks to keep it in mind what it is we're grabbing. And then we're going to grab our task.objects. And just like we kind of did in our view up here, our view, the view tasks view, except we're going to, instead of grabbing all of them, we're going to use get and grab just one of them and pass the ID parameter set to PK. I can zoom in a little bit for everybody to follow along a little easier. And so now we're going to grab just that one ID, just that one object that has that ID as its primary key that matches the primary key that was passed to this view function. Now what we're going to do is going to be very, very similar to what we did in the create function up here, where we're going to have to make a form of some kind because the user is going to interact with the form as well. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to check the request method. We're going to instantiate a form, and then we're going to see if that form is valid. Okay. So very simply, we'll say if request, exactly like we did before, dot method is equal to, so double equal signs, all caps post, colon, then we enter the code block for that conditional area. Then we're going to set a variable form that's going to be a task form. And we will similarly, like we have before, send it the post information from the request. So to do that, do request.post, all caps, no spaces. And this time we're going to set another parameter that we're going to call instance. It's just the word instance. And then we set it, say what we want the instance to be, and we're going to set it as task, the task that we created up here on line 36. That is the task that we want to do something with. So what this is going to do is when it makes this form, it's going to set the form fields of this form as exactly the fields that are in this task object in our database. So what's good about doing it this way, there's several ways we could do this. What's good about doing in this method is that it's flexibly going to grab all of the ones that we have written into the model. So if we go and change something in the model, we talked about this before. If you want to change something, add a field, take away a field, whatever the case may be, you don't have to change any code here. It'll grab that every time, and it'll what's called bind that model and those fields from that model to this form. So this is called form binding, form model binding, where it ties them together. And this is the common way to do it, is to put it here. You can do this in other ways. You can separate this call by moving it out of this as an argument. And once you've instantiated this on a separate line, do form.instance equals task. But this, again, is just kind of the preferred way to do it. So we're going to pass it in as a parameter, binding the task model as an instance to our form when we instantiate it. And then underneath that, it's going to be the exact same stuff. So we're going to say if form.is valid. So we'll validate the form. So now it's got the post data in there. It's got the same fields that it had from before. And then we're just going to save it. So form.save. And it's that simple. And then we're going to do the exact same thing that we did up here. And we'll return a redirect statement and redirect users to the reverse of our namespaced to do view tasks. And then we're going to close all of those things off so that I don't forget to do so and end up with my interpreter yelling at me. So in this first code block, we're doing the same thing that we had done up here, but what we have done is instantiated our form with the model that we grabbed. So we have exactly the same fields in our form as we did in the model. And then we're going to save it. So it's going to take the information from our post request, drop it into those model fields, and save it. Now we need to do the other condition for if our form is not valid. This was our second if block to say if a form is valid. I'm sorry, not. This needs to be if our request method is not post. Sorry, that's what we're checking. So the outer if, we're checking if our request method is post. We go through. If the form's not valid, it's just not going to do anything. It'll throw errors, and it'll handle that. We're not worried about that. If the method is not post, so it's a get method, and we're coming to it the first time, we need to pass the empty form like we've done above, where you see on the create. Except this time, once again, we're going to pass it the instance of the task object up here, just like we did here. Now, what this is going to do on the get request is it's going to give the information that was in the database in the form pre-populated. So you could see that information there. If you don't include this and you instantiate an empty class like we did up here on line 28 in the create task thing, it'll give you a form and it'll work. You'll be able to update it, but it'll be a blank form entirely. And the information from the database won't be there. So this is a really nice piece to add. It's not required. It'll function without it, but this is good for users to be able to see in the form what they're updating and what changes they're making by pre-populating it for them. So now we're going to, just like we did above, set a context dictionary. And we're going to send it our form as a key value pair. If I could type with our string for form and then the form itself. And then we're also going to add to this context this time the task object. So we can do some other stuff with it and grab some things later. But we can add, any number of tasks or any number of things into the context like this, just adding them into the dictionary. And then we're going to do our return statement and render the appropriate template for what we're going to do. So it's going to be a similar statement to the create. It's going to say return. Oh, I got to actually be in the window here. So return. And we're going to use render this time because we're going to be rendering a template. So it's going to take the request because we got to figure out if it's going to be a post or a get request, what the case may be. And then we're going to give it the to-do, create, and here, actually, hold on real quick. We would normally at this point say update task HTML and then go make an update task template and do those things. But this is so similar to creating on that end specifically that we're basically going to reuse the exact same form and change pretty much nothing to it. Like the change is basically here between create and update. So the front end form, instead of making a whole new, thing for it, we're just going to use the same actual HTML file that we used up here. We're just going to rename it to create to handle both instances, and then we'll just put a little bit of logic inside of that form using Django to change the heading on the page because the form itself is going to be exactly the same. So to save us some coding, we'll just update and refactor our code a little bit here and use one template for both create and update. So we're going to call that when we get to it. It's going to be the next step we do. But for now, since we know that's what we're going to do, we're going to make this create dash update dash task because it's going to handle both those situations. And we want to give it a descriptive name so we know what it is. And then the last thing we have to send to this render is the context that we made. Then also before we leave here, since we're changing this, we're going to change the name of this file. It's no longer going to be called create task, and it needs to, both these views need to go to it. So we need to update this as well by adding update here in the name of the template that's going to get loaded in the render of the create task call. All right, so now we got to make that change as well. But first, since the template part is after we update URLs, that is the next step. You write views, you route your URLs, then you go mess with your templates. So we've set our views, knowing what our templates are going to be. So we shouldn't have to come back here and do any changes if we did everything right here. We didn't get any errors when we saved it, so there's nothing popping out on the little warnings. There's no X's or triangles. So we should be good, theoretically. Let's move on and see if we can break something. So we're going to go back to our to-dos directory, and we're going to go adjust our URLs. So to-do directory urls.py. And we're just going to map, following very similar patterns, we're going to map ourselves a new URL. But this time, we're going to have to pass a little bit more information because we have to give it the ID or primary key of the task that we want to do something to. So the ones we've done up to now have gotten all the tasks. The view tasks just got everything. The create tasks just got a blank form, but this one we have to send a little bit of information to it. And so there are a couple of ways. I mean, there's a couple of tags that we use for that. And we do that in this definition of the URL. So we started the same way we started every other one. We're going to do path, open up parentheses, and then we're going to open up a string and then define a URL. This could be literally, again, anything that we want to. We're going to keep some semblance of logic to it. And we're going to say task update. There's probably, all kinds of better ways to do this, best practices, whatever the case may be. This is explicit, clear what we're talking about. And then we're going to do a open bracket right here. So the kind of less than sign, and we're going to type the word int, which is short for integer, and it's going to tell us that we expect an integer to be here. And then we're going to say colon, so this is going to be a key value pair. So int colon and then pk, telling you that we expected there to be a primary key that is passed to this as the update. And we're going to make that, we'll keep that inside of our string. So all of that is part of the string. The less than sign, int, colon, pk, greater than sign, kind of looking like an HTML tag with a key value pair inside. That's how we tell it that it's going to expect an integer that's going to designate the primary key of the task that we want to do something with. So Now we do
And this just turns into a suffix on the URL so that it opens up a page, right?
exactly. And so all it does is going to go to when we go to this and navigate it, it
Mhm.
would show this up in the URL.
So when you see
So
those pages where it says question mark page
yeah,
32,
yeah.
that's
And
just
yeah, and there are some ways again. So if we want to get really deep into the security measures and whatnot, and you don't want to expose some of these numbers in there and pass them through open URLs, there's ways to cover that kind of stuff and all those sorts of things. But yes, that's exactly what it's doing. So that is a good note, actually. I'm glad you asked that question because this is something you should keep in mind. You don't want to pass any real sensitive information through here. And then, it is something that obscuring your URLs at some point might be good to keep people out of it, but there's not a big risk on this one if somebody knows the number of the task they're updating. So I think we'll be all right with it. But yes, that is something actually really to keep in mind is that it's going to be written in clear text at the very top of the page in the URL. So keep that in mind as you're designing other more complex things. And then from here, it's going to follow the same pattern we've done with the other ones. So we're going to do views dot update underscore task. And since we're following the conventions, we don't have to look back on it and make sure because we just know that it's update underscore task. Similarly, we're going to name it something. So we could name this whatever we like, but we're going to follow the convention and say update task. So what's cool about this is that we set in the back end, we're using the same template for this, but the routing here is going to call it different things. And so we don't have to make any changes here if we make any changes to the templates or do anything else. This is all set and ready to go. So we should be able to just save this and move on from it and go do whatever we need to do to update the template. So the first thing we're going to do is we have to rename it like we talked about. There are a couple of ways that we can rename it. We could go back through our to do. So the template we're talking about, just to make sure that we're clear, we go to do templates, to do. If my internet wants to play along, it was not sure it did. So we have this create task HTML. If you recall, this is what it looks like, right? It says new task up here at the top, and then it's got this form that's in here. So for the update task, this form section right here is exactly the same. There's literally no difference at all. The only thing conceivably that we even want to change on this is maybe change this word, just a single word new, to update. So that doesn't warrant having an entirely new file with just one word difference between the two files. So we're not even gonna bother making an update task and then refactoring it down to a single file. This is kind of why we're doing one file. But so I'm gonna close this because I don't want it to be open while I'm in it. But we could rename it. We could probably rename it here. But there's a really fast way to rename things. In a bash console, you can use move, the MV command. Its actual main function is to rename stuff. So we could just use MV and then we're going to do to do and templates. So we have to get down into the thing that we want to do. So the syntax of this is source destination. So we do to do templates to do, and then we want our source was going to be create task.html. And since we're doing, we want to rename it, we don't want to move it anywhere. We're just basically going to give it that same path and then a new file name at the end. So the path that we give it is to do. Again, using tab complete to make sure that we're actually getting all the pieces that we want. To do templates to do. And then we're going to give it the name that we gave it before in our view, which is create dash update. And it's going to wrap me down to a new line, but I didn't hit enter. It's just wrapping me around. So create dash update dash task dot html. And that's going to be the new name of our file. So it's going to change the name of the file when I hit enter on this, hopefully, unless I mistype something and I break things. And we can verify that by going back to our to do here. And I haven't refreshed the browser yet, so it still says create task. Now hit refresh. And there it goes, create update task HTML. And when I open this, it should look the same that it did just a second ago, but now it has a different name. Okay, cool. So now that we're in here, we can build it out to give us different information based on the context. So we sent in our view, if you recall, and we can open it up to look at it again, just so that you don't have to totally recall. We'll open this up in a new tab. We'll go down to our to do views.py. All right, so we can reference this if we need to, but the context object that we sent includes a form and the task object. So the task is going to have some details about it. It'll have all the things about it that a task could have, the title, status, all that sort of stuff. And so now we have it in here as an object. We can reference it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the fact that it's available to us in our context to build some conditional logic to change this heading to be either an update task heading or a new task heading. So it's gonna be real simple use of Django's if logic. So we're going to add the opening curly brackets, and then we'll say if task, and that's going to give us a Boolean value of if it's true, it'll come in here. And then I'm going to indent just because it's easier to read. This is an HTML file, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to make a new H3 tag, right? Update task. And then since we have access to that task info, I'm going to say which number we want with double curly brackets and task.id. And it'll give us the task ID right there and just say, hey, you're going to delete task number, whatever. I could put anything in there I wanted to. I could have the entire thing, but we know what we're going to fill in this form with the information that's in the database already. So we don't need to give it the name, the title up here that's going to be in there. This is just, something to add in there, kind of look a little bit nicer. This isn't even really important. We could just take out, honestly, the new task entirely, and people would know that you were updating tasks when we get to the form. So this is kind of some nice to have stuff anyway, really just for demonstrative purposes to show you how to build a nicer looking form that reacts a little bit to the different contexts and shows you that you can use one set of templates in numerous contexts by reusing and using Django's logic. So we're just going to move the new task H3 tag into our else conditional block. And then we'll close this off with our end if and our ending curly brackets. So that's really it. So we've built our very simple conditional logic statement using Django's tag system to give us one heading if it's an update request and another heading if it's a new creation request. And that's basically just by checking the context and seeing if there's a task item. And that only happens in the update request tasks, right? In the update context, because as we say, here are two contexts. Here's our create task context, just as a form, no task. Updates has a task. So we do that check and we respond accordingly. So let's save that. And that is all we have to do on this template. We have to do one more step before we can try this out and make sure that we got it working the way we wanted to. But we're going to need to go to our views and update a way to navigate to this updating thing that we've done. So to get there, we're going to go back to just back up one level. And so we're still in to-do templates to-do as a directory, and we're going to do our view tasks.html. And what we're going to do here is somewhere on this page, we want to put a way to get into and update the particular task. So we're already going through, we have a tasks list, an object of things holding all the tasks. Because if you recall, this is our view tasks function that we're looking at right here. And we pass that tasks object in our context. So we look for tasks, and then this is going to be for each individual task. So this is probably the place if we want to do any updating, we're going to want to put our logic in here because it's already set up to specifically grab a one particular task and do some stuff with it. So similar to the calls before, we can do some stuff, get its ID, and get these other pieces of it. And so we're going to put it somewhere in here. What I like to do is typically I'll just turn this title into an A tag. So it's a hyperlinked underlined, title of the task, and you can click on that and go make your updates. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to wrap this into an A tag by going right inside this TD element. I'm just going to hit enter to get some space, so it's a little bit easier to read. So here we have our first table data element, and then I'm going to actually put two spaces so we got room to do all the stuff we want to do. And right here on the step down, we're going to put in our A tag. So I'm going to do an A tag. I'm going to give me the closing tag. I'm going to cut it and put it down underneath my task title. So now this task title is going to be the text that's inside of our A tag. So it'll be the underlined, hyperlink that you're seeing everywhere on the internet. It'll be blue, underlined, because we haven't given any style to tell it otherwise. Again, that's fine for our evil purposes. We'll let it rock and roll like that. We just need to set an href to tell it where to go. So inside the actual tag itself, we're going to define the href attribute and set it to, again, using double quotations because we're in HTML and it's important to do so. We're going to use our Django URL tag like we have in the past. So open curly brackets, percentage sign, URL, and then single quotation mark, our namespaced application to do URL. So update task. And if you recall, that's the name that we gave it in our URL.py, our URLs.py file in the to do URLs.py. And we know that we don't have to go look because we're following the same convention each time. It's what is the CRUD operation we're doing and what is the thing we're doing it on separated by a hyphen. So we can just write that in quickly. That's why it's important to follow conventions within your project. This could have been an underscore, but keep it consistent. It'll really save you some time. There's one more piece we need. So again, this is very similar to our create, but again, we're taking something existing. So now we need to pass our task ID as part of this URL. So I'm going to close this tag real quick so I don't forget to, and it's real easy to forget, but I'm going to close this tag. But before the closing tag, so inside of our Django tag, outside of our quotation marks, this is easy to mess these things up because Chris, to your point, we said like if one of my tricks is how to not mess up all these brackets, I'm going to give you more brackets and things to do with them just, to help you out. But
Awesome.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you thinking of me.
No worries. So in here, after the URL actual that we used here in our namespaced URL, we're going to get a space and we're going to type in task.id, not in quotation marks. So it's just going to grab that task object and it's going to take its ID. We know that's an integer, doesn't matter, and it's going to pass it in. So now we have our A tag set up, ready to go. And that should be, if we didn't make any mistakes along the way, once we save this, that should be our process. So we wrote our view, we routed our URLs. I'm going to reload the source code on the server. We updated our template for the form to handle some logic, so we don't have to rewrite an entire new form, make a whole new thing. And we added our A tag here in the view, so we should be able to navigate to that. So now I've reloaded myself on the server. If I go over to the site on the browser and I refresh, you see that all the titles turned into those hyperlinks. So that's good. Hasn't broken yet. That's also good news. And so we have our last task that we just made. And we click on that. It gives us what we expected with the update task number. It gives us the pre-filled information from what it was. So let's say we finish this one. We'll set it to complete. And we'll hit submit and see if we can actually make that update. And it did. So there's the status, set to complete. And we are ready to go. So we could still, again, a full set of testing would include that we can make a new task again. Let's update me by sometime next year. Cool. So we made a new task, and now we'll click on this, make sure we can update it in some way. Say I misspelled it. But now, since that was the task, we also want to set it to complete so you could make multiple changes. And both of those changes come through. So it says complete, and now it's spelled properly. So now we have our create, our read, as you can see right now in front of us, and our update. All three of those operations working directly in the platform. Now they've been moved out of the admin thing, so we could give this to other end users if we wanted to. Any questions from you on that, Chris, up to this? Since the heart of it is kind of here in the view structure, I'll go back to this and see if there's some part of this that's a question for you. But anything pop out as a question in all that we did. And we can open any of the files that you need if you like. Nothing?
No, I follow it.
No.
I'm
Yeah,
still
just letting it all
I'm
sink
not
in.
sure
Yeah.
I could recreate it dynamically myself.
Right.
But yeah, I
right. And again, that's not the purpose
see what
right now,
it's
right?
doing,
Yeah.
and I understand what I'm reading. So
yeah. Perfect. It's exactly where you need to
that's
be. And then again, so when we get through this, the delete operation, we're definitely gonna have time to get through the class refactoring for classes. Let's look up the delete operation real quick because it's gonna be super fast. And then once we get into classes, that will actually be something that I'm pretty sure you might be able to feel comfortable creating on your own. Because they're a little simpler than this. This is somewhat more explicit, and the classes give us an ability to import ones from Django and use a lot of this stuff that's built in instead of having to write out all this logic ourselves. So let's do the delete method real quick, a delete operation, get that in as a function. So we have a complete set of functions, and then we'll work on restructuring and refactoring all this into classes. And it'll be, if nothing else, useful information, but hopefully something that you feel you can maybe produce on your own, because they are a lot simpler. So cool. So delete. I've been promising this is simple, and it is going to be refreshingly easy for us to write this view. We're going to follow the same patterns once again, though. We're going to do view, we're going to route our URLs, and then we're going to do whatever we need to do with our templates. Now, there isn't going to be a ton with templates here, but we are going to make some front end changes, because we're going to have to add some way to actually interact with it as delete button. So we're going to have to do a similar thing we did with update, where we added some way for it to be updated. We're going to do the same thing, add some way for it to be deleted. And we're going to use the JavaScript that we used before. Chris, I know you had issues getting that working. Did you get that working, by the way, or is it still not working? Have you even tried again?
I haven't gone back to it.
Haven't gone back to it. Okay. No problem. Because again, once we get to the classes, that's again something that there is a way to do that in Django. And we could do it with a function here and like write another view and all that stuff. But I'm going to save that for refactoring and doing it in classes, because it's built into classes. It just expects a template from you. So all you have to do is a template, and you can skip all that JavaScript entirely. So we'll have a way to do confirmation of deletion, even if you didn't get the JavaScript running once we get through the classes. But
Which is so weird because the buttons work.
I know. Yeah. So again, this is one of those things that if it's JavaScript that's the hassle or the hang up or the holdup or whatever, there are ways to get parts of most of it done, at least that piece of it for sure done in Django. And since we're not doing a lot of heavy front end stuff, not using JavaScript at all for this is not gonna be the end of the world. So I'm gonna show you a way to get around needing that JavaScript that we used. That was just something that I really wanted people to see for the front end week in particular, because JavaScript really that's what it does, is front end type stuff. And the deletion confirmation in the context of a to-do list, pretty much the only thing we're gonna need JavaScript to do. We don't have any crazy animations or anything, sexy carousels or anything like that going on. So, all right. So much ado about delete task. Let's knock this out. This is going to be really simple. So as a function, we're going to define a function just like we had before, following the same conventions, delete task. We're going to, like we have with our other ones, send the request, and we're going to send which one we want to delete, just like we did with the update task before, right? So delete task, open parentheses, request, comma, PK, close parentheses, colon. Now we have to get, just like we did with the update, we're going to get that task from our database by saying, and from the task table, this is what turns into SQL at some point. And we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to get that PK, that primary key, as the ID that we want to grab it from. So we're using the exact same structure up to this point that we did for update. And now it takes the really fast, easy turn. So this is all we need to delete something. We do task.delete, and we're done. We have now deleted our task. So the task view is basically complete. We just need to handle a way to redirect our users back to where we want them to be. So this is, think about this like any of these, where we just redirect them when they're done, right? So we're not rendering anything, we're just going to redirect them. Now, we could, at this point, since if we wanted to move away from the JavaScript entirely, we could put an intermediate step and kind of flip this logic around and return a confirmation first and then delete the task. We could say, hey, just drop this down into something and make them confirm first. But since we have that JavaScript, we're going to leave it like this. And again, I'm going to leave it to the refactoring into classes before we do that piece. I'm going to show you how simple it is. That again, that confirmation isn't even required. So we don't have to mess with writing that logic here. We're just going to return our redirect statement. So we're going to redirect users to the reverse of our namespaced to do view tasks view. I'm going to close off our single quotations and both of the closing parentheses. So this right here, this is it. This is all you need. If you don't want to have that confirmation and you want to just delete stuff and be committed to it, this is perfect. This is fine. You can build that logic in and create a template that'll handle the confirmation, which we're going to do with our class-based view here in a minute. But again, that's not a requirement for a task to be deleted and for it to function as an application. So we're going to leave it aside for now and not write it into this. Now we just got to go and route our URL. So let's save this. We've written our view. We'll go up a level real quick in our directory to just back to the to-do thing, to urls.py. So we're at my site to do urls.py. And directly under the task path, we're just going to define a new path to our delete, which is going to be exactly the same. It's going to be the same thing that we did with update, except we're going to pass it. I mean, we're going to pass it the same way, an integer. That's the PK, it's the primary key. So the only difference really is we're just calling this the delete URL is the way for it to go. And then we do the same thing to views.delete underscore task. And then we set the name as, following our convention, delete dash task. Again, no hard and fast rule on why those have to be or should be underscores or dashes. I mean, underscores are real common. It could be underscores all the way through, but we've been doing it this way. We're going to follow that just as our own project convention. So now we've done that. We've added our URL and we've defined our view. Now we need to go do whatever we need to do in the front end, which is really not that much. We just have to add our delete button. So we're going to go back to our view task, which we already have open from before. I left it open, so here it is. And taking a step kind of outside of the specific one, we have all of our information presented into a table, right? And if you remember, our table row at the top is like the column headers. And we have all the headers to our title, our due, and our status. And we're going to add something down here that's going to delete this task. But unlike our update task, it doesn't really cleanly make sense to put it into one of these, right? We don't want to put the delete task button underneath like the status or something like that. Because if somebody sees a hyperlink for the status, they might think that can update the status if they click on that and then they're deleting their tasks. And we don't want that. So we don't want to be confusing for folks. But we do want to, in this bit of logic, because this is the part where we're already grabbing our specific task. So we know that already. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to, at the top table first, we're going to make space in the table by adding a header column. So underneath the status column header, we're going to add another TH element, but we're going to leave it blank. There's nothing in it. So it's just going to be a placeholder for table data down here. So for the individual task, we're going to go underneath the task.status TD element. That's the table data element. We're going to add a new data element. Now this is just directly going to be an A tag. It's just going to be a delete tag. That's it. So we don't need to put anything else from the task in here. We could, but we don't need to. We could put the task ID, I guess, if we really wanted to, just so there's something else to look at, or we could just simply write delete task as a word or set of a phrase, I guess, inside of our A tag. So that's the text that's shown instead of doing anything from the task itself. But we could grab something from the task if we decided we wanted to, and our design dictated it. For our purposes, our design says we just want the words delete task. Now we just have to set our href like we did before with the update task, almost exactly like the update task, where we're going to set our double quotation marks, our curly bracket, and percentage sign. I'm going to go ahead and close this before I move on so I don't forget. So percentage sign, curly bracket. Inside our Django tag, we're going to use URL as a tag type. Use our namespaced to do URL, and we're going to use the delete task. Again, I'm following the convention, so I don't have to go check. And once again, we're going to pass the task.id. So exactly like update, the URL pattern is going to look exactly the same, except it's going to point to delete task instead of update task. So that's it. So we've added this button here, this link. It is a button, but so we want it to look like a button, and we also want to give it that class. So again, Chris, I know this is something you could just leave out for now if you want to, but the class button will make it look not like not like a hyperlink, like that underlined thing. So if you want to just add class BTN, then it should take that stuff off, and it'll just be the words. And for anybody that's got the JavaScript working, remember we called our class button-delete. Also useful to follow convention because we wrote that over like 2 weeks ago now. And instead of me having to go look up that JavaScript and say, wait, what do we call that class? I know it's button dash delete because it's the delete button. I don't have to go look and reference anything. And if I follow conventions all the time, it just really speeds up the coding. You don't have to go reference stuff and look stuff up. So be consistent in your naming and things should work easier. Okay, so now we have added our button to delete a specific task, and it should give us that JavaScript warning as well if you have that working for you. So when I save this, and I reload the code on our server, it should be the last thing that we need to do. And once that's done, let's go have a look. So I'm going to go back over to the site in the browser where I had it. I'm going to refresh this browser. So it grabs the newest source code. And now it's moved everything over into our new blank column. And there's a delete task. You can see it's not underlined like these are. It has just, there's no backing of any kind. When I hover over, it's a button. We can make it look like this and give it that button primary class if we wanted a big blue button over there. But I think this works. So let's try one of these. Let's click on this delete task button and see if it does what we expect it to. So what we expect it to do is pop up with that error or warning and confirm with us that we want to actually delete this task before it does it. So I'm gonna hit delete, and there's our warning. It says that our site says delete task ? And again, this is in the JavaScript. If we want to change any of this, that's where we would change it. And we hit OK, the update me task at the bottom should disappear. We should be routed back to this view like we told it to. And there it goes. So it's gone. So now we have deleted that task, and we could delete more tasks if we wanted to. We could delete yet another task. Give us this confirmation. We hit OK, and it's gone. So we now have our fully functioning web application. We could do all 4 of the CRUD operations. We can view right here, so we can create tasks. So we can create them. Not that, spell it right. Create me. We could give it due dates. We could put in all the information that we need to. And we could give it a status. We can update them. We can update their statuses. We can update their due dates. We can update whatever we need to with it. And we could delete them. So that is a fully functioning web application written in Django, live on the internet. If you haven't been following along and you went to this site, you could do it too. I didn't lock this down in any way. So if you navigate to my site at the Hired Labs di42.pythonanywhere.com/to-do, you'd be able to interact with this too. You'd be able to add some stuff. There's nothing stopping you. There's no nothing. If you've been following along up to now on your own, or if you want to use mine as an example and you want to just look at it, you can go on your phone because this is everywhere. And you could put in your URL. So if I did Hired Labs di42, I should be able to see my site on my phone as well. And I'm not sure I can show you that, but I can. I have the same functions on my phone as I have on the web browser there, because it's still run through a web browser. It's just my mobile web browser. And so now this application is complete, ready to go, ready to use, ready to customize, has all the functions. This could be rewritten into any application that you know of online. This could be a blog. You could change this into blog posts. You could have comments at the bottom of it. No matter what you make this into, it will be a to-do list at its heart. It will have these 4 functions: the create, read, update, delete functions in the application, no matter what you do with it. But this is the base that you could take and build from here. So that is quite literally it. That's it. We finished the build. We have a fully functioning app. It's live on the internet. We have a few pages, and this is what the course promised. So, Chris, I know we didn't do a lot after that last time I asked you out questions because I told you delete was really simple. But do you have any questions?
No. I just had a couple quotation marks. I think that were breaking me, and
Yeah.
I think I'm past that now.
Yeah. Are you with me? Were you able to get to this point as well?
To-do list, about, home. Yes, we're back. And I have a delete task. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm just going to see if I can make it a button just to do it.
Just to play around. Yeah, exactly. So now you have it. That's what I'm saying. Is now you can be like, well, what if I wanted to? And man, let your mind run, because you could do whatever you want to with it from here. So since we do have time, and I was hoping we get time, and I included it in the documentation for today because it's it's well worth it. It's really cool. And it's something that I think a lot of tutorials that I've seen online, kind of to your point, Chris, earlier when we were talking about Git, they do a really bad job of explaining why you would do function views versus class-based views, right? And if you remember here, I'll actually refresh your memory. Let's go back here up to our my site, the top level URLs. So my site URLs. We'll see in there. We're not going to do any writing in here. I just want to show you this. We're going to go back to our views here and write some stuff. It's going to be mostly work in the views and the project or app level URLs. But what's cool here is that this comes. So this is the one that's built into Django when you start a new project, and it comes built with every project, and it always comes with this string at the top that gives you information. It's got a link to some stuff, but it also tells you about like what you need to do for function-based views versus class-based views. So here's function views, and it shows you the pattern for how you add URL patterns. And this should be familiar to you by now. This is exactly what we did. They used home as the example. We called ours index, but you could do it the same way, right? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to write some class-based views, and then we just have to update our URL patterns to look like this. And that's it, really. So it's going to be refactoring that we're going to do here. Now we have our basic functioning. We're going to update what we have to reflect a different pattern and a different way of doing it, right? So it shows both of these are out here. And again, tutorials go through and they'll say, okay, write a function-based view. And now write a class-based view. And I'm like, but why would I do that? Why would I write a class? Like, what's the difference? And why would I care? Right. So I'm going to show you hopefully why you would care, why you want to do it in class-based views. The main reason is that using the cool parts about Python classes, not Django class, Python classes, and their ability to do things that we mentioned already up to now with inheritance, like we did when we made the form, and use stuff that's built in really easily. So a lot of the logic that we had in these functional views that we had to write out longhand, we're going to be able to just sum up into a view and just use it. And then also we can define our forms the way we had our form on a separate place, and we had to make that into a class. We could have made that class or that form right here. We could have made that class form here. It would have been just messy, and I just put in another file right off the bat to not even let you consider putting your classes in here for forms. But if we make class-based views, we can define forms right directly within those class-based views, and we don't have to make a separate form of any kind. So there are many advantages to doing it in classes. It's a lot simpler. You'll end up writing a lot less code. You could use a lot more of what's built in. And it's a lot more powerful, honestly. I mean, you could do all the same stuff with functions, though. You can get it all done with functions. Everything you do with a class, pretty much, you can do with a function. So as you're learning, as you're getting started, I recommend just use one, pick one, and do that you're comfortable with. You're gonna find solutions for one over the other places, and you may find a way to implement something that you only know how to do in classes, so you gravitate towards doing those things in classes. But they're both available. There may be reasons you choose one over the other. Usually, it's kind of just matter of choice, what you're trying to get done. But classes are great, so we're gonna go through those. The first thing we need to do is import the classes we're going to use. So just like we've done in the past, we import our model class and we did those things. We're going to import some generic stuff from Django that's going to be what they call their generic view classes. So we're going to say from Django.views.generic. We're going to import some classes. So we're going to import our create view. So it's going to be the CRUD classes. So create, we're gonna have some kind of read, update, and delete. The read, though, is there's a slight separation because we think about what read means and we look at something. Our read is a whole list of all of the to-do items. Another way to think about it is if you wanted to see a to-do item as a detail and read it that way and read just one individual item out of one row, basically out of a database, and get one record and get the information there. So they have a detail view and they have a list view built into Django. So for our purposes, we're going to use list view. Since again, if we look at our view tasks, we're getting all the tasks and we're just putting them out on the list. So that's good enough for us. Again, if we wanted to say our view was like Imagine we have profiles, right? We're doing user profiles. And if you wanted to have a whole bunch of profiles in a list of profiles and to see like everybody that's in your roster or something like that, you'd use the list view. And then you'd use the detail view if you wanted to click on one of them and see all the information about them on like their own profile page or something like that. So that's kind of what those two views are. They're both read operations. It's just a matter of how you want to present it at the end. So for us, list view is fine. We're not doing a detail view. So we'll import that. We'll import an update view. And then we'll import a delete view. That's all of our CRUD operations imported. So we're gonna skip down. We're gonna leave our functions for now. I'm not gonna go destroying things, getting rid of stuff. We'll leave those in place, and we're just gonna refactor away from it so none of the functionality breaks along the way. And we could do this piece at a time. I'm gonna kind of go through it, I think, in one shot, just in the essence of time. But we may try doing it one at a time and make sure that it doesn't break, because that is better practice. And I think we do have time for it. So let's try that. So let's try stepping through and refactoring this piece at a time, starting with create, and we'll just go on down, create, and we'll do read and then update and delete, right? So none of these things should change as we do it. But I guess we'll have to find out, right? So for a class definition, what do we do? Do you remember how to define classes?
Just the word class up front, right?
Just the word class. And then what are the conventions for it?
Capital, first letters capitalized on class object.
Yes. So task, and the convention in Python or in Django is we say what the view is. So task create view is the convention. So capitalize task, capitalize create, capitalize view, all one word though. And then we're going to not import, but use inherit that create view that we imported at the top. So we pass that into the parentheses, the opening and closing parentheses after our task create view, and the colon, enter a new code block. And now we're going to tell it which model that we want to use. So model task. And that's going to look a lot like our form. If you recall, when we defined our form class, we had to tell it which model to use inside that class meta, the class within a class that we were using. We called models, and then we called fields to tell it which fields from that model. And again, we're going to do that same thing here, fields. And we're going to give it a list, just like we did when we did that form. We're going to say we want the title as a string, comma, the due date as a string. Remember, it's called due in our model. So we're going to give it the same field names as in the model.py. And status, if I could spell status right, as a string. I'm going to close that up as a list. And that's exactly what we had in the task form class, right? That we used up here. So this task form class is basically this same piece of code. So what this has done is it's made that form right there. This is what I was saying about not having to do it explicitly. We've done it now. It's in the class itself. So we don't have to have another file. We don't have to have another class definition. It's just there.
Is there a way to save yourself that, make that a more global object that you can just reference by both?
Well, no, because, well,
I mean, it's just a variable, right?
You
I
can.
mean, it's just a variable name.
You can, absolutely.
Can you
because what you can do
that as a
so what you can do
local
is
instance of a single list that you don't have to keep making the list over and over. Yeah,
absolutely. No. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's what I'm saying, is that it is really just a matter of choice, right? So when we do all four of them, you'll see that we'll list this out each time, and we could set it as what model or what form. We could just set it to form and then use this task form since we already defined it one place. So yes, that's absolutely true. But I just wanted to show you here, again, this is kind of just another way to do it, that if you're using different forms for different things, possibly, or if you want to do different fields in different views, and this is a way to do it. And so it just
seems the opposite of the lazy approach of only doing it once, you know?
No, I know. And I get you that it's so like some of these things, again, there we could easily, again, we just use the task form that we already made. So I'm saying that if we came into this assuming we haven't made that task form somewhere else, and we just wanted to make this one view like this real quick, and we just knock it out. But yes, that is a good point. I've just done this
to myself a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
And then you have to go back to add something. You have to add that list 14 different places.
Right.
And remember all those different places you did it, rather than just adding it in one file.
Exactly. And so that's that is, again, that's one of those things that you have to make that decision where if you do it in classes and you define them here and keep it in one place, then this is the only file that you have to do it in. But if you do it on several rows and you want to make all those rows the same and it's reused in several rows in this file, right? If I use it on row 62 or line 62 here, and then we're going to use these same ones again, because create and update are really similar. So we're going to use the same things again to avoid having it in two places. Yes, we could put it out in the task form and just reference this as the form and just say, yeah, use this form and do this. I'm going to do it explicitly again. This is just somewhat for demonstrative purposes. To your point, this may not be the practice that you want to do when you do yours, but this is just to show how this would work if you wanted to do it here. So, but that is a fair point that just like we've done with, creating things in one place, combining this even.
Base.html. I mean, it's a template. Now I don't have to redo it. I just change one
Exactly.
spot and every single form
Exactly.
changes.
Exactly.
I
So that
redo my
is,
buttons along the top row and all the buttons are done on
yep,
every
yep,
page.
yep. And that is
Yeah.
absolutely possible to do with these. That is 100% possible to do with these. And you do the same thing where
Okay.
we create the form the way we did in that file the way we did, and then we just reference it here as the attribute, as one of the attributes of the class, tell it to use that form. So yeah, good question. That's absolutely fair. And that's a fair point, is that this that we're doing here is the more kind of explicit, verbose, somewhat repeating ourselves because we're going to do it twice way. That does lead to a little bit harder to maintain, a little bit trickier. But this is for demonstrative purposes to show us that's how you would do it, and you could build a form straight into a class without having to build all that form stuff separately. And again, for if our project was going to stay this size and it was just going to be a to-do list with just this much, then probably having a separate form in a separate place is overkill. You know what I mean?
Too much
And
work.
yeah,
Maybe the
and
right strategy, but just doesn't. It's just like
yeah, it doesn't need, like, you're only maintaining two lines
using the
with
cannon to kill the mosquito. Yeah.
exactly with
Exactly.
three things in it. Doing it, having 4 lines of code is fine. And having a whole separate form file with just these 2 lines of code in it is kind of silly. If you're not doing any, a lot of times it comes down to, again, convention. There's no computer science reason why one's better than the other. No huge performance reason. It could be, again, the maintenance of the project, or it could be if you have complex logic that you want to run, you're not going to do it here, right? You're not going to, this will get really complex, and then your file here will get really complicated outside of just maintaining these two fields. So if you want to do any custom calculations or logic or do any weird stuff with the form, you're going to want to have it out on a separate form and then put it in here. So yeah, fair point. But this, again, just to introduce us to the classes and see all the things they can do in kind of an easy way and an explicit way as well, to say like, hey, you can make your form directly here and rock with it.
Oh.
And then also, if we didn't do that, there'd be like nothing in some of these classes. But all right, so the other things we need to pass to this for our creating a task is we have to get a template like we did before. So it's really the same that we did above, but we call template name as an attribute, and then we set it to just the string of the name of the template that we want. So the same thing, the to do slash create update task .html, just as a string. And then we need to pass it a success URL. Now there are other, this is a choice on how you want to do this. There are other ways we could do a method and define like a way to do some other things before we do our URL, but a basic way to do it is going to expect either this or a method defining where to go after success. So this is kind of the simplest way to do it, is just say, go back to our kind of root of our to do application. And that right there, whoop, I forgot I'm on a Mac, and hitting that makes it save the screen. So that right there is a basic class view for create. It's going to inherit all the parts it needs to do pretty much this logic that we did with all the form and all this stuff and the validation. It has these things built into it. So we can leave them alone. We don't have to do anything with it from here. There are ways that we could add stuff, like right here, we don't have to explicitly say the context, right? We don't have to do anything to explicitly tell it what context to use. It's going to automatically take this model name and set a context object with that model name as lowercase thing. So we could use the context object without being explicit and explicitly setting it. It's just built into the views. We can override any of that stuff though. So if we want to, for example, add something to the context, we can define a method down here called get context objects and add stuff to it. And we could do a different form logic where we've done, say, this whole save and validation and whatnot. We can override the form method inside a class and do other logic inside of there. But we're not doing anything crazy. We're just saving these things, and we're just using basically the basic, form and tasks in our context. So we don't have a reason to do anything wild with overriding the built-in methods of context creation and form creation. But that's possible. It's something you can do. So this right here counts as a minimal task, and it should run just fine. It should just do what the create task function did, just as a class. So to test that out, we got to make some changes to the URL. So we're going to save this. We're going to go over to our urls.py. So we go up, urls.py. The first thing we need to do is we need to change our import statements because we need to get our class into our place here. So one second. I want to make sure I didn't skip a step. Okay, no, I didn't. Great. All right. So we're going to get our view in here. So we just have to import from the views. So from dot views, we're going to import specifically the models, right? So last time from here, we imported all the views and then we did views dot whatever view we wanted, right? This was for functional views. So we're not going to be using this anymore. So this import statement is going to only be for our functional views. For class views, we have to do it just a little bit differently. We say which file exactly we're taking our classes from, and then we're going to explicitly list each class we want to take. So we started with create, even though our things are listed here in view. We're going to go in CRUD order. So we're going to import our create task view, and again, following convention, so we know that's the name of it. The only change that we have to make now, I'm going to copy this because I don't want to just rewrite it twice, is this call right here in the middle. So I'm down on my create task path. So on line 10 for me. And where it says views.create underscore task, I'm going to change this. I'm going to take it out and I'm going to change it to create task views, the name of the model we made, dot as view method, which means I have to have open and close parentheses. So this is the convention for class-based views and how you reference them in a URL. If you forget this, again, I pointed this out before, the top level URLs, the one that comes standard with Django is going to have these things written out exactly on what the function view looks like here, where it says views.viewTask, whatever, and the class-based view. So if you forget how these go, that's useful. I'm going to keep these mixed for now, just to give a demonstration. And hopefully, if we've done this, that's the only updating we really got to do. We don't have to do anything else because we don't have to make any template changes. We don't have to, do any of that. This is a simple refactoring. I'm going to reload my source code on the server. And once that's done, slide over to our site, refresh this in the browser, and hopefully I didn't break anything, but we'll see. That's not reassuring that's taking so long to refresh. Oh, something went
Mine
wrong.
blew up too. Yeah.
Let's see what
Okay,
we did
good.
wrong. What did we do wrong? Let's see. Internal server error tasks,
Line
new.
27 of URL stuff.
What did I forget on urls.py? So delete task.
It said line 27. That does make sense.
There is no line 27.
My site. Oh, do
It's line 20. That means there's no line 20. Did I not close something? View as view. Task list. And it's URLs that broke. New Django exception, get response. Okay. All right. Task.
Gotta be missing.
Mm-hmm. So it was never closed. Wait, is that the current
No, you gotta go way to the bottom.
import? Wait, we import create task view from to do views not view. Why?
Yeah, it should be the third one
Line
from the bottom, right?
5 and see trace back.
Include to do URLs.
Use that import create task view. Okay, so is it an import problem? Probably not. Because that's oh, yes. I'm all over here talking about name conventions. I switched them around. It's not create task view, task create view. God, it's the name of my class. So there you go. So if you give it the wrong class name, that'll probably give it a problem. Let me just double check. So now I talked all that noise about how you don't have to double check if you follow naming conventions. And then I didn't follow my own naming conventions, I think. Let me just reload and I'm going to verify that that was actually my error. That error is just telling me that I'm not using those things. Yeah, it's task create view. So that should be my problem. Hopefully. All right. So now I fixed that problem in URLs.
Yep.
Switching around and calling it some other thing. That's why I can't import my class because it doesn't exist as I called it. All right. So now we go back. There we go. Now I refresh, reload the information, refresh my browser, and it breaks again. All right, cool. So what's the task? What's breaking now? Task.new. Django tried this in this order. Task form.html. What does that mean? Oh, under the form. I get you. Task.html template task. Okay. What is that telling me?
Let's preview.
Create. Shouldn't be a form in here. So we have our create update task HTML as our template. Ah, more misspellings. It's not a template name. It's a template name. Good
Well, it is that
God.
time of the month, right?
Apparently. Man. All right, let's try this again. Now,
Template. Yeah.
we gotta not have our templates. Ah, apparently, I have an accent somewhere that makes me write things wrong. So it's a template name. Okay, now reload to the server. And now we'll refresh our browser. And it didn't take forever to load, so that's reassuring. Let's add a task, and it works. Okay, cool. So now we got the new task. Let's see if it works even more. So template is not a word. And that's due right now, but I'm going to, say it should be done already since I should have known. Cool. Now it works. We haven't broken anything with refactoring after we broke it a couple of times. We are able to still update our tasks. I hope. Yep. Still update. Change that to complete. Let's see if we can delete it. And we
If you
can.
really want to burn your
Cool.
brain a little bit, I'm getting the confirm button pop up.
Confirm button. Oh, are you?
Yeah,
Nice.
I had the delete task, and all of a sudden there's a confirm button.
Excellent.
Uh,
Okay,
uh,
cool.
yeah, why?
We'll leave it. We'll leave it,
That's
man. Just
yeah.
take
Sometimes
the
just
W.
best not to ask. Yeah.
Just take that W. All right. So
Yeah.
now we should, if I don't misspell everything that I write, we should be able to very similarly refactor all the rest of our views into class-based views with the exception of the delete one. So we can once we make it a class-based view to still use our JavaScript, it's going to be kind of a hassle. And it's going to be easier to use the built-in stuff to Django. So I don't know. We got 10 minutes. I think we got plenty of time. You want to just rock through these real quick and show what they're for? Because the other ones are basically the same thing over and over again. So we can just knock them out really, really quick.
So we did, so
Yeah.
it's task list view,
Yeah.
task
So,
update
so
view, task.
right. So the next one is class task, right? List view, and we're going to inherit the list view built in, colon, same thing. Tell it what model to use. The task. This one we don't have to give it fields because it's not a form, and it's not template. It's template name. Gotta remind myself. Not go too fast and try to misspell some stuff. So then this is going to be our to do slash view dash tasks plural.html, close the string. And then this one, we're going to give it an explicit context object name because we don't want to take the default tasks. If you remember to our front end template, it has tasks as an object that loops through to find all those things. So if we don't explicitly set one, you're not going to, it'll say you have no tasks when you do have tasks. So the way to do that is to say context object name and then set it to what you want it to be. And we want it to be the plural tasks. So we want to have both the task. So now we're not going to be able to use a task object. It's going to be tasks in this one. Right? List view. Cool. So that should be the last one we need there. No, not saving here. I'm going to save it. And I'm just going to go ahead and knock out the other views while we're here. And we'll
update, or create and update would be the same pretty much, right?
basically, so that's create and update are going to be really similar. Yeah. So we do class and task, and this is going to be updates. Is we're going to follow the CRUD acronym, right? So task update view. Update view is going to inherit, that's the word, inherit the generic update view. It's going to take model task, and yeah, exactly. It's going to be the same stuff up here.
Task is
as
capped,
yeah.
right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, good call. I was actually going to do this because you're not supposed to repeat yourself, but it's exactly the same stuff. So we're just gonna rock that. So I mean, really, no, we'll just leave it like that because best practice keep it separate just in case you had different things for different reasons, right? But cool. And then so now we got create, we got read, we got our update, and now we just got to get the class for deleting, which again should be straightforward. Except this one, again, is going to expect us to have a template, so we're just gonna have to go make that template real fast. But it's not going to be anything crazy. It's real easy. It's just a form with a "Are you sure you want to delete this task?" thing, and then we say yes, we do want to delete the task, and we go about deleting our task. So let's again. I want to make sure I'm not missing a step on any of these before we just hustle through them like that. So we're going to do task delete view. It's going to take the generic delete view, colon, not semicolon. See, going too fast. It'll mess me up. So model is going to be our task again, task model. And we will say our template name, template underscore name is going to set to, it's going to be in the to do directory, just like before, except we're going to call it confirm delete task.html. We got to go make that. We don't have it yet, but that's what it's going to be. And then we'll give it the success URL that we have in the past, which is just the slash to do. And we'll close it up. Whoop, close it up. Okay. So that should be all the view definitions. It's either much simpler, much more compact because we're not doing any crazy logic or adding any overrides to the methods or anything like that, which again is possible. You can do it. But let's go make us a new template. So real quick over in the bash console. I don't know. I'll just do it up in here. So we'll go to view. We're going to go into our templates to do subdirectory, and we're going to make a confirm delete task. Confirm delete task.html file that we said we were going to use as our template. So let's make that. And then we're going to add all the normal kind of stuff that we always add into our forms. And then just a real quick, hey, at the top, is this really what you want to do? So just like we've done with any Django stuff, we're going to do the extends, our base.html, closing tag, and then we're going to get our content block tag. So block, we named it content. Could be named anything, but in our project, that's what it's named so far. And I'm going to close this so that I do not forget, because I always forget the end block. And now we'll put our content in here. So we're just going to put a paragraph tag that just says, are you sure you want to delete task? And then we'll do the same thing we did before with task number. And we know we can grab the ID by saying task.id, because again, it's the implied context object is the name of the model in lowercase. So we just say task.id. And now we're going to put a form that has a submit button and a cancel button. That's it. And so we're going to do the same thing we did before with the form. Method is going to equal post. And inside the form, we pass the always important CSRF.
Does it matter that that post is lowercase?
Token. No, it doesn't. It shouldn't. But you're right. For convention, keep it the same. Should be uppercase. Consistency. All right. So we have CSRF underscore token to keep us somewhat safe from the cross-site reference forgeries. Then we're going to add our button for submitting. So the type will be submit. If I could spell the word submit, we will enter that as our type. And then we'll just put the word confirm inside the button. Nothing else to that. That's real easy. And then we'll add our cancel button, which is going to be an A tag that has an href back pointing us back to our home, our base view URL. So we're going to use the Django tag URL, then the namespace to do view dash tasks. Close up the tag. And then we'll close up our A tag and put the word cancel inside of it. So that should be pretty much all we need. That's it. It's a form. Very simple. It says, hey, you want to use this task ID? Do you really want to delete that? All right, cool. Go ahead and delete it. And now that we've done that, we can remove the JavaScript. Now that you finally got it working, Chris, I think that's probably why, because it knew you were about to remove it. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go back to my top level templates. So my site all the way up to the top level, my site, then templates. And, oh, I'm sorry. No, not all the way up to here. We're still in to do templates. What am I talking about? To do templates. To do, we're just back in view tasks. I'm tripping. So the delete button, we can remove this class, the button dash delete class from there, and it'll just be a regular button. And we're going to handle now our confirmation through the Django URL system. So now we've done those things. We've made a few changes. Let's reload our server with the latest data, the latest code. Oh, what did we forget? Did we forget anything? What did we forget? Ooh, we've got to update our URLs. So now we're only pulling one class-based view. We need to pull the rest of them as class-based views. So we have our task create. We also have our task list view. We have our task update view, and we have our task delete view. We need to do the same thing that we did with the create. Refactor all of our calls to be the as underscore view method for each of these classes that we're importing. So I'm just going to change these out. This is update dot as view, and don't mix these up because we're going to call them by the same names. And if you put the wrong class in there, then it'll all do all kinds of wacky stuff. And we don't want that to happen. So we'll say delete dot as underscore view method that we're calling, open and close parentheses. So we have our list view as our view task. We have our create view for create, our update view for update, and our delete view for delete. Now we should be able to save this and update our server code. And if everything has gone properly, which after that many lines of code, I'm not really sure it would. Normally, again, we'd piece this out one by one before we did all those changes and then just expect it to work and then see what went right. We're going to ignore this error because it says imported but unused. So that's good. That means we changed all of our imports or all of our calls down here. We're not using our functional view imports anymore. We could get rid of our views, our functional views, but let's test it first before we go destroying anything. So I'm going to go back and refresh. It refreshed quickly. That's always a good sign, and nothing broke immediately. So that's nice. So let's try our delete first. Let's go to this new task. Let's see if update still works. Update still seems to work. Let's say it's completed. Hit submit. It says new task again. Says it's completed. Cool. So let's delete it since we're done with it. Now it takes us to our new page that says, are you sure you want to delete task number 4024? That's the only info we gave it. We could give it as much as we wanted to since now we know the template works. It is grabbing the information like we wanted to. Hit the confirm button, and it deleted it. So now we've refactored our code to be able to read, update. We did try the create before, but let's just make sure we didn't break it. Newest task. And we'll say that's due sometime down the road, and we'll save it. So now we can make, so now we have our 4 CRUD operations after stumbling along through the refactoring and misspelling a whole bunch of stuff. We got it to work. And now we have our basic set, and I'm leaving in the views.py file. Both are functional views here and the class-based views. I could completely delete all these function views and it would still work just the same because we're not doing anything with them. And we could remove them entirely. And that would be the thing to do because we're not using them, so we should get rid of them. I mean, I was going to keep these for nostalgia, but we could actually just destroy these all the way. And you know what? I'm going to because we don't need them. And there we go. And so we'll leave these two as functions, the index and the about, because they're not really doing anything. They're fine like that. They're just rendering something. But now we just have our CRUD operations. Oh, left delete task. Don't need that function. Now we just have our CRUD operations, our 4 CRUD operations as classes, and they're much more compact, much more simple, and using the built-in Django stuff. So since again that was just refactoring, that shouldn't change anything. We should be able to do exactly the same stuff we did, and everything should work exactly as it was before. So here we go. We can see tasks. We can update tasks. We can delete tasks with confirmation, not using JavaScript. So that is the app. We finished it. We finished it twice over, actually, because we did it all really quickly in just a few minutes. And now you see again, after doing just basic stuff, it only took us a few minutes to whip that up. We did the whole app, really, the whole back end of it, all the CRUD operations here in what, less than half an hour. Well, half an hour, counting the debugging with my misspellings on the create step. It still took us about 30 minutes to do all of that max. And that's kind of talking through it. So if you're doing it on your own and you know what you're doing, you've done this a few times, getting it this far to a point where you can really start doing complex calculations and operations and more stuff with it, it really won't take you that long. So we're right on time because we started about 5 minutes late. So we're like spot on. We covered everything I wanted to. We've built our application. It is a complete live application. If you followed along, Chris, were you able to follow along and get it running this like this?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Here,
going.
You wanna share and show us?
Sure.
I'd love to see it, man, because this is the success we were going for. Is somebody that started without having this and has it now.
Increase my screen size here a bit.
Excellent.
You see it?
Yeah, I can. It says confirm.
Yeah, so we got the home page, the about page, the to-do list.
Yeah.
Adding a task. It's due yesterday, but you know, who's counting?
Right.
What is this month, day, year? Let's just do
I think it's year month date.
May 2024. See if it'll take it.
Yeah.
to do, submit,
Nice.
a little bit forgiving,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can update it,
Yep.
and then we
Outdated.
delete it.
And delete it. Nice. Beautiful. You have a fully functioning web application, man. Congratulations.
Ugh, a lot of hand holding, but
Which,
we
I
did it.
mean, it is a class, dude. So like, how do you feel though? How does that feel to have
Oh,
that all
no, no,
set up
no.
and
It's
go?
it's it's good. I'm just trying to link all the different bits in the
Sure.
when you're watching this stuff go through on a class that's recorded or a YouTube video. Just
Mhm.
there's so much you have to do on just faith.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
no, hey, what's that period mean?
Yeah.
You know,
Why is
is
this here?
is that
Yeah.
a past statement? Is that I mean,
Yeah,
just
exactly.
those questions just go unanswered,
Yep.
and you're just stuck at taking everything back again on faith, and that only
Yeah.
earns you so much down the road. It's that why question that hangs out there that you just never get done.
Yeah. I'm hoping we're tying it together a little more for you.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
excellent.
No,
Excellent.
it's still a bit to digest, but
It is.
I, I I see the pieces now. It's just a matter of picking each one, play with it a bit.
Yep.
Hopefully, I can't destroy it in a way I can't fix it. So you get past that, and
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's what
move
again the
on.
documentation is good for because you should be able to go back to those as references. And then
Yeah,
also, so I'm gonna wrap this up here, but as kind of what we're gonna do next time and our last time together is I mentioned this already. We're gonna go through GitHub and whatnot. And what I'm probably gonna do is put this code up on GitHub so you could grab like the full reference set from there once you're familiar with how to grab stuff down. So I'm gonna send out again recording like I always do and probably sometime tomorrow. I doubt I'll have enough of it. Well, I may be able to put it together tonight because I'm not going to rewrite documentation for how to do the thing at GitHub that I need people that I need you to do before Thursday if you want to actually follow along with us and pull down stuff from GitHub because we're going to pull down a repository that we have up there and play
okay,
around with a poker game that runs in the command line. And the idea is that we're going to show like how to do it and the mechanics of it and what Git is used for, and encourage you to go from there and get involved in projects and use it. And because it's really like this that we've done now is all the mechanics and how to do it. You need to go get practice now. So practice on your own with this that you have, break it, do all kinds of stuff. And then what we're going to do next time is show you how to start branching out and working with other people's projects that are out there and getting more practice and getting, the really nerve wracking part is pulling down somebody else's project and trying to contribute to it. And so what I want to get everyone to the point to do is feel comfortable with those simple mechanics of pull down somebody else's code, run it locally yourself, play around with it, make changes to it, and then send it back to them with a change. That's the full thing that GitHub does. That's what Git does as a thing, right? So we're gonna go through that step process of pull down some code, be able to run it in our own local environment and see the code, the source code itself, so we could read it and then make some changes and send it back up for the team or the person, whoever's approval, to maybe integrate it into the code base itself. And that's really what Git does. So it's a way for people to collaborate, work together, make changes, and make really cool stuff and contribute to projects. So I'm gonna leave plenty of time for it for us to like walk through it because it is can be kind of mind bending. It's a lot like some multiverse stuff from Marvel or like the Flash or something like that, or from if you're on the DC side, I guess. But it's that kind of thing where you can have several versions of the same set of software, which again is just files in a directory. And what Git does is allows people to keep track of which version is being used and integrate changes from many places into one project. And that's really what Git is good for. And it's a good thing to use even on your own to keep your own project safe. So like what you said is hopefully you don't break it in a way that you can't work back and fix it. It's exactly what Git is for. So what you do is you start to like you build this into a repository as they call it, and we'll go through the mechanics of this next time. But then once this is saved, you can make another copy of it to play around with and do changes and do whatever you like to and break it completely without fear of breaking your special base that's saved and won't be broken. And that's the beauty of it is that you can,
yeah. Because
you
I've
don't
done
have to
that
be
to myself.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so you don't have to be careful with, and like the idea is that you don't want to be careful with your code and experimenting. You want to go in and break stuff. You want to, you know, say, hey, what would happen if I do this and try it and not be afraid that it's going to completely destroy everything. Now, I will, as we go through, give you caveats that, you know, anytime you're doing database stuff, Git's not going to save you. So, be very careful
Okay,
with
yeah.
database changes and whatnot, that your database doesn't go to Git. You want to keep that out of source code, like things like your environment files, those secret things that we made in the beginning. Those aren't going to go to any repository like Git, a version control system of any kind. You don't want to do that. So
Sure.
there are
Yeah, but
bits and pieces.
databases aren't
Yeah.
that hard to deal with because you can actually copy that .db file and
Usually, but what I'm saying is when you go to start
yeah,
making changes and stuff in the Django sense
sure.
of it, where like your models file that you can save up into Git, but the
Mm,
actual state of
data.
your database, again, you
Mhm,
can run into some real easy issues where,
mhm.
you've made changes one place and one database doesn't have the changes that match and the states don't match. And then you end up in a kind of a hassle trying to figure all that stuff out. But,
Right.
so again, just the complexity it goes insane really fast. But um, it is a good tool to keep you from destroying something in your project and like allows you to experiment without fear of really breaking something super important. So I'll say that for next time. Um, Play with this between now and then. I'll send out the follow ups and I'll send out sort of like what needs to be done before Thursday if you're going to want to follow along with it. But even at that, even if it does take you like, I wouldn't mind waiting a few minutes if you to try to set it up during class. If people needed to do it during class, it's okay. But it shouldn't take a long time, and the directions on GitHub are really good. But
Okay.
I'll follow up with email, send that in the follow up with the video. Any questions or anything else before we end today? Chris, you got anything, man? You're still sharing your screen, by the way. So if you want to stop
Yeah. I was just checking to see if
that.
because I could have swore I had Git on here, but maybe
Yeah.
not.
It's okay. It's okay. If you don't, again, signing up for GitHub is I recommend it so that you can interact with GitHub um and then you'll set up your SSH in Python anywhere. But I'll send
Right.
a link to the documentation of exactly what I'm talking about because it's a very defined set of steps, but they're pretty simple. You are going to end up like copying and pasting and not quite understanding what it's telling you to do, but it holds you through the hand. It really is just like SSH is just a secure way for GitHub to send you stuff,
Sure.
and you have
Yeah, I
to
use
set it
that
up
for
in the.
routers and
Yeah, you just did.
Linux systems all the
It's
time.
just
Yeah.
it's instead of signing in with your username and password each time, you set up this key so that like the computer you're using, GitHub knows it's safe, and you can just send stuff between it quickly. So you set it up
Certificate
once, and
exchange. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you set it, forget it, man. So like you go through the process one time, and then you can
Yeah.
interchange in between it. So you got to set it up for each device you use. We'll be doing it on Python anywhere, so you have to set up for the Python environment. But
Mhm.
I'll send directions. It's real simple. But if nothing else, man, we will end the meeting here, and I'll follow up with the rest of the stuff. Thanks for joining, and I will see you Thursday.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Well, actually,
Sounds
I'll see
good.
you tomorrow, but we'll see the class
Yeah.
Thursday. All right, bro.
All
Bye.
right. Have a great night.
You
All
too.
right. Bye.